No, this actually ties in really nicely with what Heather was just talking about, in the sense that we've talked. Heather's talked a little bit about the pricing structure, but also around framing the pricing, and really importantly about building fees around the value that you generate, not the time it takes. Because this is a really important point, and in fact, there's several bits that I'm going to be able to kind of refer to and go. And remember that Heather said this because of this, because essentially, if you think about it, if we concentrate on the value that the client gets as a result of the work that we do, the pricing structure becomes so much more powerful. Like your £30 million, £30 million question. You frame the value to the client, and the client then goes, yeah, of course, why wouldn't I pay £5,000 if that's the fee to do it? But if you can't gone in and said it's £5,000 for a day, it's a very different conversation. But the other thing that I think with fees that we need to think about is, it's very difficult when a client comes to us for us to say no. Heather's referred to saying no a lot, and trying to say no more. Every time we say every time we say yes to something, we're saying no to 20 other things. So we need to think about what we say no to, because it allows us the opportunity to say yes to something that's more important. And the same applies with clients. It's very difficult to sometimes say, this client is trying to give me some money, but it's not really our ideal client. It's not really the right amount of money that we want to be working for. Like your example, it's £500. Is £500 better than nothing? But actually, that £500 is costing you the time to find your ideal client. So every time you accept the client that isn't the right fit, it's costing you the time to find an ideal client that is the right fit. And that, just to stick with Heather's numbers, if she accepts a £500 paid gig because it's better than nothing, in that day she could have found the £5,000 paying client. And so we have to realize the cost of saying yes to accepting the wrong type of business. And that's really what we want to spend a bit of time on, which mostly will be this afternoon. But it really is important to know where our minimums are and what that ideal looks like, because that is what allows us to find more of the right clients and create more value. I don't know where Kenny has gone, but I'm going to carry on anyway. So one of the books, and I haven't read this whole book actually, because I read it in chunks. I read chunks of it, but it tied in quite nicely with what I wanted to talk about here. And ultimately, it's called the Pumpkin Plan. And the Pumpkin Plan it's really quite a simple strategy, and there's not a huge amount in there that's new. But what it does do is it thinks about that client process and the client value process in a different way or it kind of tells the story in a slightly different way. But one thing that it does highlight particularly, which I know it's not segregation, it's segmentation. Segmentation. We are going to segregate these clients into, but it's actually really important, because if you don't segment your clients, and just out of curiosity, because I'm guessing that the financial advisors in the room segment their clients and have different service propositions for different clients. Who else segments their clients? Okay, great. So you have a clearly defined segment, with this client A is getting this client B is getting this. Okay, fantastic. Because by understanding the clients and the different offerings that you can have, and it's going to tie in nicely to what we do with Magnification Mastery later on this afternoon. But if by understanding what the right solution is for the client, and the way we can offer that more effectively, and also understanding what is efficient for us as a business, we can create a much more valuable proposition. And we at Efficient Portfolio had the 3 client levels. Going back to Heather's number 3 levels, I'm a big believer in that. I'm not expecting you to read this, don't worry, but we had our planning clients, we had our family clients, and our private clients. We did have the customer option. We took on pretty much no customers. Everyone we took on was going to be a client, because we knew that was not our ideal client. But having that three options, and as Heather rightly says, that middle option is the one that you probably want them to accept. So we would give it in that way. And in fact, we've done the same with the trusted team. We've ultimately got a digital only offering. We've got the one-to-one coaching. I am going to change the order in which I tell people about this in our coaching call. But the offer that we want them to accept is the main trusted team offer. Those of you that have seen this before, you'll notice that the price is going up at the end of this month because again, for reasons I'll explain as we go through this. But the pricing point, I think, is really important. But ultimately, you've got to know your offering and you want to segment. Now, this offer, we're actually not really marketing this at all, but it is a fallback option because it is purely digital only. It's all based on digital content we've already created. It takes none of my time. So this is a great offer to make because ultimately, when we talk about magnifying what we do, and which I'll come on to later on, why would you not have that available? It's a low cost solution. If this isn't the right fit for them, this is where we nurture our ideal clients, and this will get them to the point where they're actually ready to come on board, whether that's in terms of profitability of the business or whether that's trusting and buying into what we talk about at the trusted team. And one of the things that we're going to do in the Kaizen meeting, which is next Monday, we're going to work on the backstage. So the Kaizen meeting is the meeting, as a reminder, or for anyone that wasn't here at the last workshop, is the meeting you dial into with your team. Dial in with as many of the team as possible, particularly when it comes to the backstage Kaizen, because ultimately this is going to be about coming up with new ideas of how you can operate the business better, but backstage, what you do behind the scenes, what the client doesn't necessarily see. But a lot of that is about the outstanding operations. This is the processes that we go through, and having amazing outstanding operations and having predictable, scalable processes is really important. And I dropped this in here just now, just because this is part of what the pumpkin patch talks about. It's like, right, you've got to have a scalable, repeatable business, and having amazing, outstanding operations is one of the ways that you do that. He also talks about innovation, and we've obviously talked about the game of gains in a previous workshop. But the interesting piece, the most interesting piece I took from the pumpkin patch was the pruning piece. Now, I remember somebody telling me years ago, you should sack 5 clients a year, I can't even remember what it was, but we should definitely be pruning everything within our business. And one of the questions I'm going to be asking you next week is, what should you be stopping in your business? What are you doing at the moment you don't need to do anymore? But it should also apply to our clients. And what you don't need to do. When I heard this for the first time, it's like, well, if I sack clients, that's people that are already now clients. They're giving us money. Why would we want to turn that away? But how we deliver that solution can be different. So we're going to come on to this piece again this afternoon. But could it be that you sell those clients rather than you sack them? Could it be that you automate, like I said, with the digital only offering within the trusted team? That's a completely automated process once they're on board. So can we provide them a different solution that meets their needs, that doesn't take our time up? So can we automate them? Can we delegate them? Can we pass them on to somebody else to manage and look after? So this is something that we want to think about when we're building this business and thinking about this fee model, because ultimately, if we've got clients, and we've probably all had clients. I know, Kenny, you sold a chunk of your clients previously, so perhaps you got rid of a load of these. But we ended up having clients that, had they come to us towards the last 5 years, there's no way we would have taken them on as a client because they weren't the right fit for us. But they'd been a client for 10 years prior to that, so you didn't really want to sack them because you've looked on, they're part of your journey. But equally, how can we provide them a solution that meets their needs without taking our time? So the last thing I'm going to do before lunch is just think about pricing, because one of the pieces I'm going to go on to a few more pieces in terms of how we think about pricing. But one of the concepts that I picked up a while ago was this concept of price pockets. Conceptually, there are price pockets that people have mental barriers around. So obviously there's stuff that you give away for free. And we talked last time a little bit about the only thing better than free is fast. People will pay for fast, even if they could have got it for free. So free is a powerful price. But then you have low cost things, and there is a concept, a pocket around between 30 and 300 pounds. Then you've got the 300 to 1,000, right the way through to kind of 7 to 10,000. The important point about these pockets is that people see them as essentially the same price. So if you've got a fee and it's at the bottom of one of these price pockets, you're missing a massive opportunity. In other words, if you've got a fee, let's say you're doing a financial plan and it is £2,000, conceptually, you could be charging £5,000 for that, and the client would see it in a very similar way. I know that sounds crazy, but we're going to come on to some more number principles in a minute. But it does mean that you've got to look at your prices and think, well, okay, I should always be, for anything that we offer, it should be at the top of that pocket. So if it's less than £30, you might as well make it free, except for pads. Of course, pads, £10 is good for pads. But ultimately, you want to think about these price pockets, because that will influence, you're just missing out on money if you're somewhere towards the bottom of that. The other thing to just think about when we think about these price pockets is to think about what I call the revenue ramp, which is this model of how do you get clients moving on to the service that you really want to provide. So the revenue ramp is about giving something away for free. So we call that the attraction marketing device, when we, whether that's a book, whether that's a white paper, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a coaching call or discovery call or whatever it is, you give something away for free. Then you typically want to offer them something that's a low price. So that might be a financial plan, it might be a briefing, but it might be you can buy the pad, for example. So that's a low price to get them buying into your trust process. Then you offer, the opportunity becomes to offer something higher priced. That might be the implementation of the financial plan. That might be the full website design and rollout, et cetera, et cetera. It might be the full, management of the design project for the premises, and then make it recur. Then provide them with something, an ongoing service. They go, brilliant, you've done that. Why would I not pay? Just think about it in terms of building the house. You want to have the free conversation with the architect. You then you pay the architect's fee to design the house. Then you pay for the building of the house. But if somebody at that point says, we'll keep maintaining this house and it'll all be running perfectly for you ad infinitum, but for this fee, you've got this lovely new house. You want to make sure it's looked after. That's where people want to pay for a recurring fee. That's the business model that you generally want to be thinking about in that client journey, because along that line, you're building trust with each, at each stage, and they're more comfortable with giving you, more money to help, you help solve their solutions. And of course, within that, we talked last time about the risk reversal revolution. How can you remove the risk from them? So, for example, this financial planning fee here, you might be saying, we've got 100% money back guarantee on that, or, this implementation fee, we might have we've talked about how you can reverse the risk on that. But ultimately, that is the model you want to be thinking about within your business. How can we migrate a client through that journey? One thing that I just picked up on, one of the things that Steve's just been saying is that he paid for shockwave treatment to try and treat your back, didn't you, which was stopping you running. And you left the experience going, I've paid for 6. I don't want to really feed back that it hasn't worked for me, because the answer will be, well, why don't you pay for another 3? Like, well, I'm not happy with 6, so therefore, why would I pay for more? That is the perfect demonstration of why value-based fees is the right way to go. I don't care how long it takes something to happen. I want the result not the process. And that is why we need value-based fees. The more we can align, and I thought Heather's demonstration of this was brilliant with the £30 million question. This, if I could do this, it's worth £30 million for you. Wow. Fortunately, my fees aren't £30 million, but hey. But there's some, before I carry on with that piece, I just want to, there's a few, if we're going to think about fees, there's some pricing concepts that we want to be aware of, because it allows us to build a fee structure that is much more friendly for the client, much more friendly for us. If we're more confident in the system, then we're more confident in talking to other people about it, and therefore they're more likely to say yes. So it also goes in swings around about. Yes, Natesh.
I've got time to quickly share a quick story.
Yeah, go for it.
Wells Fine in Buckingham. I went to them because I was starting to become a hunchback from being in front of the computer too much. Realised I was starting to do it, and I went to see him, and they have the most amazing introductory, come in, we'll do an assessment. The assessment's only like 50 quid. They take a picture, you come back 2 days later, they've done an analysis showing you where your bends and creaks are. He then does some pushing and snapping, takes another picture and shows immediately there's a bit of improvement, and then takes through the value-based proposition of it will take 22 sessions to get you to where you want to be. It's done in 3 blocks. Each block is 600 quid, and by the end of it, we will have you fully straight. And had I gone into that without those 2 sessions at the start, £1.5 grand, I would have said no thanks. But by the time I'd seen the pictures and actually seen the improvement, and then whilst he was showing me the improvement, then the value proposition came in at the end of, and these are the packages we offer, and you can either do it monthly, or you can do it in blocks of 12, or you can do the whole lot, it's your choice. There was no actual difference in the price, it was how the value was presented. It was blocks of that backed with, oh, it does work.
Brilliant, thank you. But I would argue that you want to think about, so that's a brilliant example of value-based pricing, but if you could fix my back in 1 session, you'd still pay the same amount of money, wouldn't you?
No.
Wouldn't you? So,
it feels wrong.
Okay, so this is an interesting point. If I said, right, okay, to fix your back is 1,500 quid. You can either come here 1 hour a week for the next 12 weeks, or I'll do it all tomorrow in an hour. Which would you prefer?
Yeah, exactly. I prefer the long term because I don't believe it can be done.
But if the guaranteed result was
guaranteed result is what? Then yeah.
Exactly. So that is where you really get back to value-based pricing, is how can you deliver it without, I'll come back to that. So
somebody said that you today. He said, "Look, comfortable, spend a day with us. This is what we actually." It was pretty much.
I think that little word guarantee is the difference, because Charlie's just easily dropped it into that sentence. And I think that was about value. You were being a bit awkward, so we had to drop in the if I could guarantee. What's that like? Last month we talked about risk reversal to guarantee. But you tell me a person in that industry, my industry for a second, who will guarantee.
But the guarantee is not the point. The guarantee is just the perception. What we're saying is the result is going to be the same. You can either do it in 1 session or 12. 12 feels like you're getting value for money, but ultimately, if somebody said to me, let's say that's me, and I've just saved myself 11 trips to this place, I'd pay more for that. I want to pay more for the person that can fix it in 1 hour than the person that can fix it in 12, because it's actually saving me time and it's creating more value for me.
You value time, so it's the person at the end. Not saying you got value.
No, that's exactly what it's about.
Somebody might value their time more, so therefore they're going to be like, I get why you follow that camp. I don't think it's as, you might be leading on to this, but I don't think it's as simple as what you're saying. I think it's about the end person, what their value is.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And ultimately, sometimes actually, we talked about it at the last workshop where Aunt Betty's cake mix actually created more sales and more value by removing the egg and making you put that in. So sometimes adding more friction creates a greater perception of value. But absolutely, you've got to work out what your customer values ultimately, haven't you? Because for some people, it's like, you can fix that really quickly, happy days. Some people, it's like, I don't believe it's possible to fix it there, so I'm going to make you come twice as often as you need to, just so that you believe it's going to work, and therefore it does. I know Heather referred to Influence, Dr. Cialdini's book. I know I've referred to it loads of times before, but one of the stories within that, possibly I think the most fascinating story within that whole book, is the story of the turquoise jewelry. And this is the story of the lady owns the jewelry shop, and she cannot sell this batch of turquoise jewelry that she's just had in stock forever. So as she's just about to go out on holiday, she leaves a note for the lady that's running the store in her absence to say, mark the turquoise jewelry down by 50%. I just want rid of it. Anyway, comes back, turquoise jewelry's all sold, and the shop assistant, the temporary manager, says, absolutely brilliant, but can you tell me how this worked? Why did putting the price up by double mean that we sold it? And she said, I didn't. I told you to halve the price. So, well, in that case, I misunderstood, because I doubled the price, and now the turquoise jewelry that would not shift at the lower price sold. Because one of the only measures we've got of value is price. Like art is a classic example. If I told you that piece of art was worth a fiver, you go, it's crap. And yet, if I told you it was worth £5 million, you'd be looking at, wow, that's an amazing piece of art. I probably wouldn't pay $5 million for it, but I'm sure Carol would be delighted if you would. But the point is, it's so subjective, and price is one of our only ways of referencing the value that we gain or the value that we deliver. So we really want to think about where we're positioning our pricing point, because people are judging the quality of our work. It's one of the reasons why we're putting our fees up. I just signed up to a mastermind group which delivers exactly the same as the Trusted Team delivers, but it's designed for business coaches, so it's the right fit for me. I'm paying £20,000 plus VAT, so which I will come back to in a minute. Another principle, and a couple of people around the room will know exactly where this came from: the power of the number 7. Who taught us about the power of number 7? Absolutely. So the power of the number 7. So in the Western world, people prefer numbers that go down in sequence, and the 7 exaggerates that because its shape also is like a point. So in the Western world, it's because we read from left to right, people are much more inclined to say yes to either a declining number, which is why 9s are good on the end of things, and also 7s because of the shape of it. So think about your pricing, because it's as ridiculous as it is. We all know that 19.99 is £20. We all know that. And yet we all then totally ignore that from a psychological point of view and buy more things at 19.99 than we do at £20. Even though we know the game they're playing. It's why historically when you'd go into Tesco's to buy a CD, for example, you would see a lot of the higher price ticket things in Tesco's ended in a 7 for this exact reason. So having an understanding of that number psychology helps. But what's interesting, and why I found it helped so much, was it's not just in the confidence that the client, say yes because it finishes in a 7, and even better if it was 987, for example, because you've got a real good sequence there. But because you're confident in delivering that price and knowing that they'll take that number better, your delivery is more confident, and therefore you get double the benefit. So think about the pricing structure. I'm not going to go into any detail on this, but because Heather put it really succinctly. But when you go into a Levi's store, there's like that wall of jeans, isn't there? About 50 different pairs of jeans that you could pick from. And one of two things happens. You buy a pair of jeans and you forever think, I should have bought that other one because this one wasn't quite the right one for me. I bought number 35, but number 33 might have been a slightly better fit. Or you just get totally bamboozled by the whole thing and you go, actually, I just don't want to buy any jeans at all. I don't want to buy it. It's too much choice. Whereas historically, there would have been 3 pairs to pick from, and you'll go, yeah, I like that one most. done. And you're far happier with them and you buy more of them. So by giving people just a choice of 3, people are happier and they buy more. There's a great book called The Paradox of Choice, which talks about how we, in today's world, we give people too many options. In fact, that's ultimately what Steve Jobs did when he came back to Apple after being sacked the first time. He stripped the whole offering down to really limited choices so that people just went, well, I know I just want that one. So it's really straightforward. So hence why we've got the 3 options there. We just want to keep, and ultimately, like Heather says, the middle option is the one that you want them to accept. It was, wasn't it? I was just looking at that going, I haven't updated that slide. Yeah, see, there's price framing, which leads me perfectly on. So price framing is also a really powerful thing, which is actually Heather did talk about. But the example here is pricing a £1,000 suit next to a £500 suit. You want to sell more of a £500 suit, put in extra £1,000 suit, and people go, whoa, actually this feels like it's really good value. And what Heather alluded to, I don't know if you picked up on it, when you say a higher price, it doesn't the psychology of hearing numbers means it doesn't even have to be related to the same subject. So if, for example, you are trying to sell a fee for £10,000 and in the prior sentence you happen to mention that Lamborghinis cost £200,000, they immediately feel the £10,000 fee is cheaper. If in the prior sentence you've talked about how a latte is £3, the £10,000 now sounds more expensive. They're completely unrelated things. But the way the brain deals with numbers is you framed the price either the right way or the wrong way. So you want to be thinking about how you can frame your prices. So I will mention in the coaching course I'm currently doing, I've spent over and it's true, I've spent over £500,000 on coaching over the course of my professional career. I know that's a lot of money. Some of you are now questioning whether that's money well spent, but ultimately, but that's true. But what I'm doing is I'm framing the fact that actually our fees are a small drop in the ocean compared to that. Another interesting principle around pricing is bundling. So you've seen that we've bundled things together, packages together. Heather again talked about this. It creates more value in the customer's mind, but it also creates people go, well, actually, I can't. That bundle is difficult to quantify. I can compare, in this example, one shaving cream to another shaving cream, but it's difficult to compare a whole set of men's toiletries to another set of men's toiletries because it won't be the same bundle. Creates more value in people's minds, so we can bundle things together to generate a better fee structure. We can also frame price. So I used the wrong terminology. That is anchoring prices. So that where you're anchoring a higher price, but framing is also putting it in different ways. So for example, you might say the daily, we'll see this with subscription services. The daily cost is £1 a day. It's 30 quid a month, but it's £1 a day sounds better than £30 a month. We also talk about the trusted team from a monthly cost point of view. Look, there you go. It's gone back up again now. Yeah, it's great framing, isn't it? You need to get in early, quick. Yeah, this is dynamic pricing. I'm coming on to this in a minute. But part of the reason that I have a one-to-one coaching offer is to show the value. If you want me and my dedicated time every month, I'm actually really happy to do it, and I'm happy to help you, and I have no doubt that we'll get you to the success that you want much more quickly. But there's only a limited amount of time that I can do that in. So my one-to-one coaching offer has to be significantly more expensive, but it's also a great way of framing and anchoring the prices for the offer that actually is what I want people to take. And we did this in financial planning. So we would show our fees versus this chart is quite an old chart. You'd want to do it slightly differently nowadays. But this was the St. James's Place advisor back in the, I don't know what it would be now, back in the day. Obviously, I didn't put that, I wasn't stupid enough to put that there. But of course, I made it very clear where we were comparing to. This was going direct to the investment manager back in the old days where they would charge an initial fee. But you're framing it again compared to, so everyone If you just give them your fees, they go, wow, that's expensive. You go, well, yeah, but if you did this and this, actually, it's really very reasonable. Dynamic pricing. Thank you for the introduction. Dynamic pricing, the airlines use, don't they? You know, so that's another way of kind of, I mean, and actually a lot of business coaches who use it. The day after you attend a Tony Robbins event, you get an offer to go to next year's version of that event. And you know, and he'll tell you, it will never be cheaper than it is here. 2 months later, it's gone up again. 2 months later, now it's actually really difficult because he'll like, by this one, we have VIP tickets available at this price. Next, it'll be platinum tickets that include this. He's bundling stuff together, bless you. But how can you think about using dynamic pricing to create more value? I mean, the one that I think I have said before is the flower seller at the hospital. You know, if somebody's ambling towards him and they're going to see their granny, and their granny's kind of been there and is in and out of hospital all the time, it's like, bunch of flowers, £5. Yeah, that's worth it. The guy who runs in, he's just about to miss his wife giving birth, those flowers are worth £50.
Isn't this a matter of urgency rather than value?
Yeah, well, urgency is one of the measures of value, isn't it?
Well, Charlie, what happens to people, because I get this often, is people comparing you and your services to something else that is wildly different. But in their head, that's their pricing person.
Well, so one of the reasons why you create your own unique offerings, so whether that's your phenomenal process, whether that's your framework, all of that sort of stuff is making it uncomparable. That's one way you counter that. The other way is that is showing that you haven't generated enough value. You haven't demonstrated enough value. Because if you demonstrate enough value, they'll go, that is way better than what I'm being offered somewhere else. But that's about communicating how there's a difference and why there's more value there and really understanding it. Another principle within pricing is, in terms of getting the right level of prices, the optimum hotel will have 10 to 20% rooms empty at any one point. If they've got the pricing right, they know that 10 to 20% of the rooms will be empty. Same should apply for our fees. If 10 to 20% of our clients are walking away because it's too expensive, we're at the optimum place. If everyone says, yes, you're too cheap, everyone says, no, you're probably too expensive, or something else going on. But 10 to 20% saying no, and in fact, you can keep trying that, keep putting the prices up until such time as 10 to 20% are saying no because of the price. And then you know you're in an optimal place. And so this kind of brings us back to value-based fees. And value-based fee, I mean, how many people have brought in a tradesman and they've gone, well, the cost, my charge is X amount per hour. And you're like, you know, that just means I'm incentivizing you to work slowly. Now, why would I pay you? You know, our interests are not aligned when we work on an hourly rate. And I know that we all inherently distrust hourly rates. I know like the legal sector has a more a tendency to kind of steer towards it, and I kind of get the boundaries around why you do that, but it creates so much distrust in the customer, because they just think actually you're being paid to they're paying you to waste time, and so you really want to be thinking about how we can link the fees more closely to the value that you create. And I know, Matt, we had this conversation right at the start of Accelerate. It's difficult when you're starting out because you've no idea how long anything's going to take. But the sooner you can get to value-based pricing, the more you will earn and the happier the clients will be, ironically, as ridiculous as that is. And that comes back to, well, this actually links back to the conversation we had. It comes back to that story of the doctor, the guy the patient's got a problem with his knee, and the doctor comes out and he goes, right, okay, yeah, I can see what the problem is. Takes one little hammer, taps the knee on the side, and he goes, there you go, you're all fixed. And there's my invoice for £300. So £300, it only took you like 2 minutes. And he said, well, yeah, it took me 2 minutes to know to hit your knee. It took me 30 years experience to know where to hit it. And people will pay for speed. And this is why I would go back to what you were talking about earlier, Nitesh, and say, actually, if somebody can get you the result and it's quicker, people will pay more money for that. They really will.
Whereas when we think about the parts business, because we've got that now, we've got people asking us actively, well, can you get that to me quicker? Maybe we need to start building our price.
Yeah.
So you can have it 4 working days rather than 2 weeks.
But for yeah. Or you flip it and you do what Zappos did, which is you charge them for the 2-week delivery, and then you send it to them in 4 days, and they're like, "Oh my god, that was so brilliant." Now the question is whether these guys are typically repeat customers. But if they are, they'll be so blown away by that. Then they go, "Well, why?" Or they just tell their mates. I ordered this part. It was going to take, historically it took 2 years to get this part. These guys promised me 2 weeks, but it turned up in 4 days. You're like, wow. That's what gets people talking. I see this with marketing agencies. We get obviously approached by lots of different marketing agencies. And I always say, look, we want to align our interests. I'm not willing to sign up to a marketing agency that just says, here's our fees. Let us pay to work out whether we're any good at marketing for you. No. If you're going to be generating us leads, we want you to prove that you can. We'll work on a performance basis. And in fact, I always have this argument with IT firms. What irritates me about IT firms is when the whole thing goes down, and let's face it, that means they failed at their job to have a company that's running smoothly. That's when they come in and want to bill you for all the work. Well, how's that aligned interest? I want to pay you more when I don't hear anything from you. A successful IT company, as far as I can see, is one that I never ever speak to.
That way you're away.
Yes. But we had a load of problems with our IT companies. Why don't I pop in and have a chat with you? Like, no, you're missing the message here. Success to me is not speaking to you more than my mother, which is what is happening at the moment. And so how can we realign our interests? And obviously we did this from a financial planning point of view. So we would have initial fees. Now, one thing that, so we always created a discount on the fees the more people invested, because one of the arguments will be, does it take 10 times as much work to invest £1 million as it does £100,000? Well, no, it doesn't. It creates more risk. It creates more cost in terms of insurance and regulatory levies and things like that. But it isn't 10 times more work, and it isn't 10 times the cost. So how can we build those discounts in? The nice thing about building in discounts in advance is when anyone says, so how can we, are those fees negotiable? Yeah, they go, yeah, the discount's already there. It's right in front of you. The more you invest, the greater the discount. So it comes back to what Heather was saying, is create more value rather than discounting, because it will devalue it. But this is basically saying, we will help you more. So you might want to think about how you can build discounts into what you do based on them doing more. And you might decide that this is not possible for the entirety of the fee. You might say our base cost is this, but then we build in this performance-based fee. So when we get you to this point and we get you this result, this is our share of it. And let's face, if somebody said they were going to deliver you £100,000 in value and you were going to pay £10,000 for it, but you only paid the £10,000 in once you got the £100,000, you're like, how many times can I give you £10,000 for £100,000? How many times can we do that? That is what you're promising here. Is how can you say, and this comes back to the price promise that we were offering people, in terms of, we'll get you 50% profit increase over 12 months. And if not, we'll carry on coaching you until we do. In other words, that the first year's subscription will get you to this point, even if it doesn't take 12 months. So again, it's all about bringing back to the value. What I liked about what Heather said is really kind of tuning into the client, saying, well, look, okay, 50% increase in profit is an additional £200,000. So really getting them to quantify, well, that's worth 200,000, and you're asking to charge me 10. Okay, so enough from me now. Let's dive into the fee value framework. And really what we want to be doing is, when we think about our fees, we want to be thinking about, well, how do we identify what the value is that we offer our clients? What value are we generating for our clients? How do we articulate that benefit more clearly? how do we leverage premium pricing? How can we understand the client segmentation piece more? And how can we evaluate and optimize our offerings?